And good evening, good afternoon, depends on where you're from, of course, to the latest Political Café of the Foundation Max van der Stoel. I'm Emiel Bongaerts, Project Manager at the FMS, and I will be hosting this panel tonight. In this panel, we will discuss the situation of Venezuelan refugees in Curaçao, situation which has drawn extensive criticism, both from Curaçaoan NGOs, Dutch NGOs, and political parties. Venezuelan refugees face fierce prosecution, both from Curaçaoan as from Venezuelan authorities back at home. And amid financial and legal insecurities, they often reside in abysmal conditions in Curaçao. In this panel, we will discuss how this happened, the roots of the crisis, the responses by both Curaçaoan and Dutch governments, and what changes should be made to better accommodate basic human rights of the Venezuelan refugees. And during this approximately hour-long talk, you can pose any question you have in the YouTube chat. I will accommodate this as much as possible during the talk. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guests of today. Welcome Natalie Dietrich Jones. You're a research fellow at the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies in the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. Highly expertised on inter-regional migration issues in the Caribbean. Natalie, thank you for joining us. Very nice. Ieteke.
Yeah.
Hi. Ieteke, you're director of the Human Rights Defense Curaçao in Curaçao, the prime organization that addresses the issues of which we were talking about today. Young organization, you're also an anthropologist, an author, and really nice to have you here. And thirdly, we will be joined by Marieke Koekkoek. She's a Dutch parliamentarian for the Pan-European Volt Party. And she will be joining us in a half an hour time because of a very busy schedule and parliamentary address during the nitrogen debate, but she will be joining us a bit later. Okay. I would like to start with you, Natalie, to start off with the roots of the crisis at hand. How is the Venezuelan political and economic crisis, how does it relate to the refugee crisis we see in Curaçao?
Okay, well, so thanks for that initial question, which I think is important to establish the context related to Venezuelan emigration. So the scholarship refers to the current crisis in Venezuela as a multi-dimensional crisis, which means essentially that there are different facets to the crisis. There is a political crisis, a crisis of democracy, an economic crisis, which is related to declining oil productivity, declining oil prices, hyperinflation and high unemployment in Venezuela. And then there's also a social and humanitarian crisis, which stems from the political and economic crisis. So there is very high poverty in Venezuela at the moment. Recent studies put the estimate of poverty at above 70%, which is quite high. There's also a health crisis. There's been the re-emergence of diseases which had been eradicated due to vaccination and due to the unavailability of medicines, food, clean water. These illnesses are re-emerging. So it's a combination of several factors that have encouraged persons to leave. Before say about 2015, well, maybe between 1999 and 2015, roughly 2 million persons had left. But since that time, the figure has ballooned to over 7 million. And the country has basically been transformed from one of immigration to one of emigration. And they're leaving and arriving to several different countries across Latin America and the Caribbean.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And one of these countries where Venezuelans are leaving to is Curaçao, of course. What are the estimates, and maybe Ieteke, you can also join in, about how many people are going to have been coming and going to Curaçao since 2015?
That's a good question. We have different estimates, but I want to tell a little bit about the history. We are very near to Venezuela. You can even see it this week. We had clear days and a calm sea, and you can see the mountains. You can see even the city lights of Coro. So for all the centuries that we exist, we have coming people, and we are going there. The first inhabitants, it's good to know, 1,000 years ago to Curaçao, came from Venezuela. So it's important that we know, especially for all the people in Holland, that they know how near the border is of the Kingdom of the Netherlands with Venezuela. We are just 40 miles away. There was the last century, we get the oil industry because the oil came up, the production came up in Venezuela. We had, Shell started here an oil company. And till that time, there were a more intense relation either, not only the families and culture, but commercial relations. That production stopped a few years ago in Venezuela, and Natalie, you for sure know. And with the production that stopped in Venezuela, it was one of the main sources of wealth in Venezuela. The people that came from Venezuela, normally there's a lot of dollars to pass here, to have here nice holidays, or to buy perfumes and other things, or to came here just for do shopping and selling their products. It stopped. And our industry stopped also. So that was a big crisis. From that time, as Natalie told too, the people came here. At first, by plane, they stayed here from the 2015, it started especially. And a big host of people that coming was in 2017. In that time, we calculated about 10,000 of people came here. And actually, the estimation of the UNHCR, the Organization of Refugees, is 14,000 in Curaçao. And if you can consider our whole population is about 150,000 or a little bit more, we will have the census next year, it is a big portion of our population.
Yeah, it's indeed immense. And so the people have been fleeing from Venezuela, where the political and economic situation has deteriorated very fast. And what has happened since the people have been coming to Curaçao? How is the asylum procedure? How does it work, Ieteke?
Yes, at first I want to tell that the border is closed. So at first people came by plane and they stayed. They had just a work permit, or they have a permit and tourist permit, and they stayed more than the 3 months, and it's allowed. So most of the people that came here from 2015 till that the border was closed, they came by plane. Then lately, more started to come by lanchas, this boat. And it is very dangerous it's very dangerous by the sea. And the people, when they get to the coast, they will be arrested when the Coast Guard see them. And now we have more Coast Guard than in the beginning, than 5 years ago. It is now 24 hours that the Dutch Koninklijke Marechaussee is there present on the sea. So the lancha that are coming to fly, they mostly, as far as we know, will be arrested. They get immediately a deportation order, and they are jailed. And in this history that I'm working now, there were people for more than a year in jail without seeing a judge. And I can tell you a lot of the abuses that take place, and we were very happy that we get the researchers from Amnesty in 2018 and later on 2021, to get more results, to do research about this abuses that were happening, especially in detention, and the people that were, especially the detention question and other cases of people that fled. So we have this, there is no, in the beginning, when it started, a lot of people came, it was 2017, there was still a possibility to ask asylum through the Red Cross. And then in Red Cross, there was the UNHCR, the Venezolaanse Organization of Refugees, assisting. But then there was an overwhelming a number of people asking asylum seeker, and then the government get very nervous, and they asked the UNHCR to leave the country. So from that time on, there was not any possibility to apply for asylum. For 2 years long, there was not a place, not a procedure to get asylum, for example, through the European Convention of Human Rights that is valid in our countries too. It is good to know that Curaçao is not didn't co-sign the International Convention of Refugees, but we are part of the European Convention of Human Rights. But it takes 2 years, 2 sad years, and people were in jail to get any side of any assistance and to have a procedure about the called Article 3. That means non-refoulement. That means you cannot be deported to your country in place. It is still not good in place, but at least there is now a procedure. There is now a possibility to apply.
Exactly, yeah. And Natalie, to move to you, because as you said, Ieteke, Curaçao is not part of the 1951 Refugee Convention. In international law, are they legally obliged to provide better basic human rights and asylum procedures for Venezuelan refugees?
That's to me?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe just to backtrack a little bit before I answer that. The governance structure in the Dutch Caribbean complicates the treaty ratification process in terms of international agreements. So we're not talking about Aruba, but Aruba is a signatory to the 1967 protocol, and Curaçao has claimed that it is not bound by either the protocol or the 1951 convention. So as Ieteke correctly pointed out, despite not ratifying the convention or the protocol, there is still the European Convention on Human Rights that would be applicable to Curaçao. 2 things though, notwithstanding that, the principle of non-refoulement is customary international law. So whether a country has ratified the convention or the protocol, it is still the responsibility of the state to abide by that principle of international law and thus not participate in refoulement practices. The other thing is that the Universal Periodic Review, which is a process that the UNHCR leads in terms of reviewing the human rights frameworks in states across the world. It has reviewed the Netherlands several times, the last time in 2017, and then there's another one coming up, well, I think it's next week.
Yeah.
Now, right, so they're being reviewed now, and the comment has been that, or the recommendation has been that the autonomous Dutch Caribbean countries ought to introduce local legislation in order to domesticize asylum procedures. So there is no clear process for asylum in Curaçao. It's being worked on. It has been elaborated since the 2017, I guess, takeover by the Curaçaoan government of the procedures. But there needs to be a very clear framework in place. The last report from Amnesty in 2021 said that it's not a very clear procedure. And in light of the willingness of the government to report how many persons have claimed, how many persons have been detained, how many persons are under appeal, it is very difficult for researchers to kind of gauge what the progress has been since 2017. So I'll stop there. I don't know if Ieteke wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, just to clarify something about the Dutch Caribbean, we have to distinguish between the Dutch Caribbean. It's for us the islands that are not directly part of the Netherlands, like Bonaire, Saba, and Station. We are called now autonomous countries. It is Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Martin. The legislation for the three parts, the three islands, that is called now Dutch Caribbean, that in your paper to Natalie, it is the three small islands that are not part of part of the legislation in Holland. But we did have this Article 3, which is now there is some kind of procedure. In that time, we came in as a human rights defense organization because there was nothing. And I'm very happy that we get the support of, for example, the Dutch Council of Refugees to give courses, the UN organization, that we didn't know about it. There was no lawyer who didn't know anything about this application over the Article 3 and things. So it was in an empirical way that we tried to get free people or to get procedures to get an Article 3 protection. And we did get experts from our counterparts, like I called already. Still, I have to tell you, there are hundreds of people that did apply for an Article 3, but nobody did get a positive answer. And it is recently this year that the Dutch organization, they called END, is giving technical assistance to the people in government to have doing these interviews, this gehoor in Dutch. But till now, and it is the most critical point in our country, is that there are thousands and thousands family invisible. They came here, they are like not existent. They don't have, they all work, even if it's not permitted to work. Everybody works to survive, but they don't have the social services. They are not feasible. They don't have a legal status, and they are just subject to an arbitrary actions of razzias. And actually, this razzias is more strongly again with in the side of a big new, I call it a prison for, they call it foreigners, aliens, for refugees that will be in jail. But now we have no policy, and I can talk a little bit more about the only attempt to give these people, these thousands of families that are here for 7 years, that are present there. There was just a small attempt to give them a possibility to a legal status, the integration responsable. That was in 2020. Can I talk? I can explain a little bit more. That was exclusively for people that have a boss, that have a stable work with an income. So all these people, all these refugees and migrant crisis, the people that fled the crisis, didn't have the possibility to apply. Most of the people who applied still don't have this legal permit. So there is, at this moment, there is no policy to make the thousands of people visible. And that, I think, it is very concerning for our country, especially for all these people that are here, handicapped children. We don't know how many status children there are now actually. And people are still abused on the workplace too. And they can still be detained. Even you're here 4 years, 5 years, there are people now in jail, they are detained. They're professional, they do good work, but they are now detained and waiting for deportation, or they apply for protection. So, well, that is just a cry from the empirical reality.
Thank you, because next to the judicial things that are, of course, also very important, it's really important to have a face to the crisis and what is happening. And as you said, I think approximately 17,000 Venezuelan refugees are now in Curaçao, often invisible. Often children are stateless because they're born in Curaçao and they're not able to get a passport. Really concerning situation as well. And if I recall correctly, none of these refugees, and we spoke also about that it's illegal under various forms of international law, but none of these refugees have been able to get asylum, right? None in all this time. Is this true?
Yes, a small correction. The number of Venezuelan refugees actually is now a little bit lower.
Okay.
Hundreds of them left.
Okay.
And they left. How do they leave? They leave the country and they go this very dangerous Caminos Verdes, these dangerous places, to the Darien, the Gap of Darien, to try to get to the United States. That's another story that they just changed their policies. Other left, went back. The children, they have the possibility to get their birth certificate. We did get a lot to do. We have not a good relation with some of the ministers, and so they feel safe to announce the birth of a child. But not everybody feels safe to go there because there's still still repression in the street. But not everybody is stateless, and we try to stimulate and give information. Oh, please do inscribe your right. Your child has the right to have a birth certificate and a nationality.
Okay, thank you. And also to Natalie, to ask you, the Venezuelan refugees, there are none that do get the asylum procedure because they're often regarded economic migrants. How is the situation of the possibility for them to get prosecuted in Venezuela? How real is this possibility?
I'm not sure if I understand the last part of the question, but the first part, I think you're reading my mind, because I was going to distinguish between the approach that the government has taken in terms of the narrative around the crisis, that it's largely referred to Venezuelans as economic migrants. And that has a legal implication because as economic migrants, they would not be entitled, well, solely on the basis of economic migration, to a claim for asylum. The court there, the last estimate that the UNHCR has put the figure, I think, at 14,000. And I just wanted to say that not all those 14,000 individuals would be claiming asylum. It's a segment of that population that might be eligible. The challenge, however, is in relation to the interdiction and detention policy, which prevents anyone who may have a legitimate claim from pursuing that claim, because it's basically you are detained and you're put in, you're caught or arrested, you're put in prison, and then you have this extended period in prison without necessarily having recourse to the procedures for asylum. What I have heard in other countries, because I'm doing research not just in Curaçao, but in Aruba, Guyana, and Trinidad and Tobago, is that some individuals don't necessarily wish to claim asylum. I think this is answering the second part of your question, because there is a political fallout for them in Venezuela in terms of surrendering their Venezuelan citizenship through such a claim for asylum. However, some migrants have chosen to go that route because it is the only legal pathway to secure status in these jurisdictions. Because otherwise, if you don't have recognition as an asylum seeker, then you would be illegal and living and working undocumented in the country. So notwithstanding the fact that there might be this political fallout, some have gone this route, one, because it's a legal pathway, but two, because there is a legitimate claim that they do have in terms of a well-founded fear of persecution if they return to Venezuela And so they would like to claim asylum, but are not able to do so.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, these people are thus between a rock and a hard place in Curaçao, and are mistreated by the government. I have a question by one of the attendees. Kido, he asks, we have seen countries like Australia and the US get away with mistreating refugees. What is your expectation of the real consequence of breaking customary international law? Give the floor to you who would like to answer. Maybe Natalie, you would like to answer.
So that's one of the challenges with international relations, is that it's usually censure or sanction that would force or compel a state to abide by the principles or norms in relation to the protection of migrant rights. So you are correct. There is a very harsh externalization policy that's used by the US and Australia. In fact, there's a paper I'm working on now that wants to compare the hot returns to this procedure that's used in the US and Australia. The context is a little bit different though. US and Australia use third countries to process asylum seekers. What is happening in Curaçao is not third country externalization, it's just the hot return. So persons might be interdicted at sea and are summarily returned, or they're detained and prevented from applying for asylum. So for Curaçao, other members of the international community might make comments, and I think it's actually a good thing, because that is what has propelled the change, although it's limited, but the change in the asylum procedures have been prompted by the comments made by international organizations like Amnesty International, like Human Rights Defense Curaçao, and that has led to the changes there. But is it enough? I think that's what your question is asking. I'm not sure I can answer that definitively.
Okay, thank you. I would like to move to another side of the crisis, which we haven't talked about. Ieteke, you mentioned it, the Dutch involvement in the crisis, the Dutch involvement also in the Coast Guard, for example. Concretely, Ieteke, is the Dutch government involved in this refugee crisis in Curaçao?
That's a very good question. We are part of the kingdom. And from the beginning that the crisis came up, the Dutch government was was helping or assisting our government for more repression and more control. And that is a sad issue, because the government, we are now a called autonomous country. And when it comes to human rights, the government and The Hague is telling everybody here, you're autonomous, so the human rights questions and the violation is an issue of the country, and they are looking away. It was very sad in the beginning when the crisis was really very sudden and new. There came here organizations, NGOs, and they told me, well, we come here to see you, it is terrible, and he went to talk to everybody, but we cannot help you because you are in the kingdom. We can help the refugees in Colombia, the Venezuela refugees in Colombia, but we cannot help you because you are in the kingdom. So the policy of the Netherlands is normally to attend to the refugees in the region, like in Greece, a very sad policy. But in that, suddenly we were not a region anymore. So they were looking away. So that is still an issue, that the government, the help that was given was to get more coast guards, more control with the more help of the migration, even money for the deportation, and to build this new prison that will have more than a double of the capacity than the actual place where the refugees can stay. So the government did not have an active role, not even in questioning the human rights thing. And that is a critical point that we can came later on, but we have the kingdom statutes. The Kingdom of the Netherlands will be criticized and is criticized internationally that they don't take care of the human rights situation in their kingdom. In that sense, we are completely part of the kingdom. There is the called waarborgfunctie, the guarantors for a function of the Hague to look what to happen, to take a note of what's happening here. And till now, we don't see we don't see any involvement, but we are happy that there are now some political parties are more aware about this static situation that just the government van Holland is just talking to the government of our islands. And now some the party, especially the Volt and it from Mrs. Ivana, makes now more the people conscious about you have to talk to the NGOs and the human rights organization in our country to get more view on what is really happening and to guarantee that the kingdom will not be stigmatized or will be criticized internationally for this very serious violation of human rights. I don't know if you know the TIP report, the trafficking on persons. Okay, that is recently done from the State Department. Well, you can see that there are criticism to our government, but the Dutch is not, they are not criticized still, but there is internationally awareness and criticism about this really difficult and critical issue about human trafficking that's passing in our borders, the smuggling of humans and to our borders. So it is an actual issue, and the kingdom has to take care that we will be internationally be warned and criticized by not taking care of their borders and what's happening here.
Yeah, thank you, Ieteke. So yeah, very well explained how the Netherlands do have responsibility, also legal, because of the kingdom in this issue, and that it's really pivotal for the international community to be more aware of what is happening in Curaçao. And I'm also really glad, Marieke, that you could join us, Marieke Koekkoek from the Volt party during all the parliamentary addresses and everything. You have been able to join. Very nice. Thank you. I would immediately would like to ask you something, because we were getting into the Dutch involvement in the refugee crisis in Curaçao. You have been very vocal into putting this towards Parliament as well. But this summer also roundtable was rejected to talk about the Curaçaoan issue. And how does it come that this issue isn't not yet there's not yet much attention in The Hague for this issue?
Yeah, good question. And apologies for rushing in and out. We have currently a debate ongoing, so we're now in the break. I think the reason why it does not have that much attention here in the Netherlands is twofold. Firstly, I think generally speaking, there is little attention, less attention, little attention to anything that concerns, say, the Caribbean part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Not per se because people are not interested at all, but because it's not something that is on people's mind on a daily basis. And I think that needs to change. But that's, I think, probably a general reason. And the second reason is more specific, is that there is this idea that the Netherlands does not have anything to say about this specific topic. So I think maybe Ieteke addressed that already a bit. Last year, we actually put forward the same motie, the same proposition to support NGOs, the civil society, in their fight for legal aid and support for refugees. And it was rejected on grounds that the Netherlands does not have competence to do that, the European part of the Netherlands. And they say that the reason that there was no competence, at least it was, as it was explained to me, was that the statute of the kingdom does not have legal basis for the Netherlands to do that. And this year, the same proposal was adopted. So there's also, I think, a bit of a misunderstanding, let's put it like this, on what we can do from the European side. And perhaps also not just a misunderstanding, but a lack of political will. And now we have a change of government. The political will is turning to the better, I think.
Okay, yeah, because 2 days ago, a motion was taken by the in the parliament. So, what is your view now with the change of government? What are the prospects? Are they changing to the better? And also regarding the detention center, which Ieteke also was referring about, how is that going in your view?
Well, it's going slowly. That's the first thing. But I hope it's indeed turning for the better. So it's slowly, gradually going better in the sense that there's now a better understanding, at least I feel in Parliament, at least, that we might not have the power to trump any kind of decisions, and we shouldn't have that. But we do have a responsibility, joint responsibility, because we are part of the same kingdom and because we have a shared history. And that is more than just, that contains more of, that includes more, than just making up rules on the finances side of things, to put it like that. And I think that is changing. I've recently visited some countries, Curaçao among others, together with a delegation of internal affairs. And that was to look into the history of the Netherlands that concerns slavery in those parts of our former colonies. But what I noticed during that visit is that, of course, we were there for the history, but that you cannot see history without seeing the present. And I think that idea is now better instilled in Parliament. And it is because of visits like that, and also because of very vocal voices coming from, for example, Curaçao. And I think that's a good development. So we should not look too much at just the formal responsibilities that we might have, but due to our joint history and joint concern for human rights protection, we have this ability to act, and that we should act.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so very clear, also a moral responsibility and perhaps obligation for the Netherlands to also act and not look away, and only formally help with Coast Guard and financial kind of things. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, I want to express for you all our great appreciation of the members of the Tweede Kamer, of the chamber, the parliament, that did go the extra mile to make this problem more visible. And that was the Volt Party with Mrs. Koekkoek and Mr. Silvana from bijeen, that there is now a debate possible about involvement of these NGOs and the human rights organization. So that is breakthrough, for us it is a breakthrough, that now the both government on both sides of the sea cannot tell each other more, well, it is your question because you're autonomous. No, we as NGOs can talk critically with our parliaments and with our government because we are local, we are not colonial. And it was always the argument, oh, no, it's so colonial that we in the Hague tell the Curaçao what to do. Now, through your motion, we are now a kind of more visible and hopefully more a partner to find solutions for our shared common problem on our island. So we are very happy that you did that, Marieke. We are really, for all of our team, we are happy that you did this extra mile together with your other members of the parliament. And it is really new in the kingdom. Did you understand this point?
Yeah, great. Yeah, great. Indeed, very important, because I was also looking at the motion and I saw precisely it was in the motion that NGOs and local organizations need more say in the situation and more ownership as well. And I think also this is really important, and Marieke also said it just yet. And to talk a little bit more about that, Ieteke, what do you as an NGO with your boots on the ground, what do you really need in this situation now to improve it instead of the status quo, what we have seen for years and years?
What we really need, and we are lobbying very hard for this, but even with the private sector, it is all the thousands of people that are here and don't want to apply, Natalie, you are right, they don't want to apply for asylum, but they want to be visible and they want to have a legal status that they can be visible through a system. And we did have some examples of a system like Colombia. We did make a kind of a policy paper. We know that in Europe, in Holland, you have the Ukraine reglement, something like that, make them visible and give them a possibility to participate in our country because they are working already. Everybody is working and is paying rent and is paying food. So this has to be a first courage step of our government. That is the first one. Another urgent thing is that we really are happy, and we are even against the new prison that was built with money of the government. It will be more the double of the places possibility to detain migrants and to deport them. So we are so unhappy with this new building, and we have enough places and possibility to give an open center for refugees, or an open shelter for people that are asking, for example, asylum, of they are in need. And there is, so we want really talk about this, an open shelter place for the people that are coming here. With the lanchas of people here, they are really abused by the laborers or by the men, because there's a lot of domestic violence actually on the island. So there's two cases: make them legal, give them a status. Look at the example of Colombia and Chile, but now you in Holland too is the Ukraine regeling, and give them a status and give them a period of transition. Then they can pay their own insurance, medical insurance. They can find how do you call it, antecedentes penales. They have a history of perhaps crime, so the antecedent penal, and give them a legal status. We need the people because we are losing a lot of people who are going to Holland. We are underpopulated, and we have enough houses that we can repair. So we like that these people are here for years already, and we know who they are, then they get a decent legal status as they all want. That is the most important, make them visible.
Exactly. Marieke, I heard you can be asked for a short time, so I would like to ask just, do you agree, or do you have something to add where you will be fighting for the next for the time to come regarding this issue?
No, so I fully agree with those 2 points. And I think what is especially important from say the Dutch Parliament is that we keep pushing for especially this visibility, because I think that the Ukraine arrangement is a really good example of how you make people visible, but also give them a place in society. And then the asylum procedure and all the difficulties that come with that is something that you still need to pursue, but can at least that can go in parallel, and people don't have to put their lives on hold. And I think that's the main issue when you have people that are basically not allowed to be visible in society, is that you ask them to basically stop their lives. And that is bad for society as a whole, because you lose on competency, but also for the people that are involved, of course. And this is, I think, why it was so important to really focus on civil society, because from the Dutch Parliament, it's difficult to say, well, you need to have this arrangement in parallel to what we have in the Netherlands. But when you are on the ground, you can push for that, and you can say, well, this works. And then from the European side, there can be assistance on how to make that work, and to how, for example, arrange good housing or working conditions. And on the detention center, that is something that I've also argued for last year, that the support that comes from the European side of the kingdom is really focused on pushing people away. So Coast Guard detaining them. All the while, we know that that actually is not what we are allowed to do because it violates human rights, and we committed ourselves to that, so that you cannot fund any kind of act that violates international human rights. So I really hope that we pull the support for that. And also because what I've understood from the situation there, and what I think is really important is that while people are in the detention center, they don't have access to legal aid. And that's I think the main reason, or at least for me, would be one of the main reasons to say that support from European side can no longer exist, because everybody's entitled to legal aid. You cannot arbitrarily detain people.
Great, thank you. I would like to move to Natalie as well to ask you, do you think that the focus on NGOs as a propeller of to solve the crisis is a good way to change it from the dynamic from state to state and a sort of a blame game? Do you think that can possibly work regarding the refugee crisis?
So I think that's one possibility. What I would like to say is that although unfortunate, what the Venezuelan migration crisis has shown is it's underscored or highlighted the deficits in the protection space for migrants across the region. This is the Caribbean region. And so it presents to states, so the Dutch, not just the Dutch part, the Caribbean part of the Dutch kingdom, but other states across the Caribbean region. It presents them with an opportunity to improve asylum procedures, because this is not an issue that affects only Curaçao. It is something that is, I would say, broad-based. We're seeing similar issues in Trinidad and Tobago, not to as great a degree in Guyana, but for different reasons. And so, although unfortunate, this is an opportunity for states to improve their response to vulnerable migrant groups. The reason the NGOs are important is that they have been shining a light on what states have not been doing well, and indicating what some of the potential solutions are. I'm actually happy that Human Rights Defense Curaçao exists. It didn't exist before 2015, and I'm hoping that it lasts beyond the crisis, because there may be other waves of migration that will be necessary to address in terms of similar issues. And Human Rights Defense has been doing an excellent job in terms of the response to Venezuelan migrants.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just one action point, and my board, my president of the board, Lucita Munir Alam, did remind me that another point that we really need as a human rights defender for Venezuelan migrants is that to have to open the bilateral relations with our neighbor Venezuela. So we are open, we want to open the borders again. Not only that we have done more commerce, but even our family visit, but to avoid more human smuggling. Now the people are coming by ways that they are not, that they are really against everything what is legal. And as long as the borders are closed, we are neighbors. It is, we have more risk that they have more abuse, more exploitation of enslavement of people that are coming as goods, like the arms and the drugs. So we want this open relation. Economically, it's better, and it is. But it has to be in phase. We cannot do it all together. But it is beneficial for our countries to have, we are both border societies, and we hope that we can that the borders will be open quickly. And thank you, Natalie, to tell about our other new tasks, because we know we have a human rights education plan. We have people from your country too coming. They are attended with us eagerly, from Jamaica, from Cuba, from the Dominican Republic. So we are here for the human rights of our country, and we hope we can continue to exist with the help of everybody.
Great. To move to Marieke before you have to leave, maybe if you have to leave already for the nitrogen debate, just do. But regarding the question of the border of the Venezuelan border, also had a question in the Q&A from Kevin. Will the Kingdom of the Netherlands reach out to the government of Venezuela to open the border? What is your take on this? Do you think this is possible?
Well, so realistically, I think that will be difficult. I fully understand the argument, and I would also be in favor of opening the border in phases, if only for people to see their families and to stop human trafficking. At the same time, I'm not entirely sure if that's realistic, if there is enough support in Parliament, in Cabinet at the moment to do so, because there are several downsides. Of course, the way that the Venezuelan government is now viewed here is not very positive. And of course, there are US relations to maintain as well. I think that also influences how we see Venezuela and how we see the opening of borders. So what I hope is that that there will be talks, not just between Venezuela and the Netherlands, but also between the Netherlands and the US on how we can solve this. Because I think that is something that in that region, you need everybody at the table to even begin speaking about opening up the borders, so that everybody will feel that all the risks perceived risk involved are covered, so to speak. I think that will be the way to go. Right now, I don't see the Netherlands just taking that step on their own.
Just on the actual situation, we had here Minister Hoekstra, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he was announcing together with our Prime Minister that they will start to study to open the borders, at first the maritime way. And I can assure you that the United States is pro. They said, I asked high people from we have contact with Washington too. It's not the issue, and they are pro too. They have don't any argument against maintaining these borders closed. So there is progress, and we hope that soon we can have at least that the boats and some planes, but at least the maritime trafficking can be open again. But that is what the news from the last 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah, so something to be continued. And as you said, Ieteke, economically it's so important for both countries, so close near each other. Also for Curaçao, also after the COVID crisis that had a big hit financially, so something to be continued. Another question in the Q&A, something different, which I might ask you Ieteke as well, is there any prospect to obtain assistance from the European Union, given its assistance to African countries, the Horn of Africa, Congo, in the framework of the 11th EDF? Why does the EU remain passive in this regard? A question from Hans Nusselder.
Okay, that's my question for me. Well, yeah. I don't have that much experience. I know that the way to get European funds is very long. So you have to have a long patience. We have some European, with the European court, we have some cases in the court, but that is not financed. So I don't think it is impossible, but we have to have a lot of patience. I know that some people of the gemeente Utrecht, they have very nice projects of more integration with the community and the migrants. There is somebody who can be helpful to get funding for this, for example, the possibility to know who are in our country, or to do some project of entrepreneurial project together. So I don't have this experience with European funding. I know that's a long way, but we don't exclude it, and it will be more than welcome. Okay,
thank you. Well, yeah, with that, I think we'll surely coming to the end of our hour-long talk. It has gone very fast. Still, do you have any additions to whatever we talked about, or something something for the future? Maybe Ieteke, you also thought about the things you would like to see at at your organization. For now, what's something where you're looking to for a next important moment regarding this issue?
Well, at first, I'm very happy that that you from the Max van der Stoel, the foundation, did take this initiative. It will be very nice that the PvdA is a little bit more visible in our country. I'm now here for 33 years, and I didn't see many initiatives to have or us more included. So I think that will be nice to have more attention. Of you are an old party, especially about labor questions. Yes, but what we hope to have more, we have to have more publications, and we need like more conversation as this to open up the Dutch people, because I still feel like the book of Gabriel Garcia Marquez tells us 100 years of solitude, and we have 3 ages of solitude, and we are still a very forgotten part in the world, especially because it is kingdom. Internationally, everybody thinks, oh, well, it is kingdom, it will be well served from The Hague, but The Hague is very ausente, very a lack of absence, of lack of presence of The Hague. I tell you, and I told already to Marieke too, we have now more presence in Washington. They are more concerned, they are more reporting than The Hague. So we hope that you can help us to make us more visible as part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And for that reason, I'm so happy that Marieke is on board, and the other party members, that finally, and it was a long way, not even this issue of the refugees, but other issues of our culture is now more visible. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, good to hear that indeed, thanks to parties such as Volt, Pan-European Party, but also looking to the Caribbean, they've been able to bring The Hague a little bit more closer. And I will do our best to bring the PvdA, the Labour Party, also a bit closer as well as working for the FMS. We'll definitely keep taking this issue to the forefront. A very important issue, close to the Netherlands, the responsibility of the Netherlands, and it's really important to stay attentive. So I want to thank you all for being here, for giving the important insights regarding this this important issue, to taking your time. Marieke, good luck with the nitrogen debate. I hope it won't take too long anymore. Ieteke, you want to tell something?
Yeah, yes, I have to thank Natalie too for your beautiful paper. Natalie. And we hope you can come here, and so that we can work more with the West Indies. It's always we did, and we have very good relations. So we need all the intellectuals to get more grip and more information about what's happening in our countries. Thank you for this a nice paper.
Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Natalie, for all your insights on the broader region, and good luck with your research as well in the future. And thank you very much. And Ieteke, also thank you for the talk and also the empirical view towards what's happening in Curaçao, and hope to keep in touch, and we'll keep attentive to the issue. So on that note, I would like to end the Political Café. Also to the audience, thank you for watching, thank you for joining. If you haven't, you can follow the FMS on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, we have it all. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter, in which we can give a little bit more updates about next Political Cafés you would like to join. So for now, have a nice evening, and goodbye.
Thank you.